Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Well, everyone, I am here with a good friend and colleague, Dave Schramm from Utah State University. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark.
Thanks for taking the time. Read a couple things here just on Dave's bio, but from Payson High School. So, Dave, you're a Utah Valley guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then attended Brigham Young University, Utah State. And then your PhD is from Auburn in Family Studies. For a while, you guys lived in Columbia, Missouri, where you taught at what is the college in Columbia? Is it
University of Missouri? Yeah. Mizzou. Mm-hmm.
And there for 9 years, then back to Utah State University, where you're a professor there. You love the outdoors with your family. You love to travel, speak, parenting, couple relationships, personal flourishing are all part of your kind of your agenda as a researcher and as a professor. But the greatest of all, Dave, besides your wonderful podcast on marriage.
Yeah, Stronger Marriage Connection. Stronger
Marriage Connection.
Yeah.
And there's a great website that goes with that. But what tops everything now is the great news you shared with our stake at an event you spoke at, that being a grandparent is coming soon, right?
It's coming in July. It's a daughter marrying in April and another daughter having a baby girl in July.
Well, congratulations to you guys. If you love being a parent, grandparenting is even more fun.
Oh, can't wait.
Well, Dave, we want to talk about some of these concepts that you've shared before regarding happiness in our lives. We know that we live in a world today that so many are finding it difficult to find happiness and joy in their lives. I'm grateful, and I know you are too, for prophets who have taught us that we can be happy despite the circumstances. But I was really intrigued. I'm going to tell everyone right now, and we're certainly happy to share this, but we in our stake have a marriage and family conference every year. And Dave was one of the keynote speakers of that conference. Dave, your message was just incredible, but I was really intrigued in that message where you shared that when you, as a stake presidency, where you serve right now as a counselor in the stake presidency, were set apart by President Meredith, the president at BYU Idaho, and also a general authority. Mm-hmm. That didn't he bless you all to be happy and to spread happiness? Tell us more about that. I thought that was a really cool thing.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. He gave us, he and Elder Clark gave us some great counsel, right? First off, it's, testify of God the Father, Son, Jesus Christ, teach the doctrine from the scriptures, give high priority to family work responsibilities. And then he said this, he said, help leaders and members find joy as they assist others to follow the Savior and progress on the covenant path and keep temple covenants. And so he said that, and then it was interesting because he said, too often, we look up on the stands and we see leaders who are grumps, and not meaning to be, but just their natural kind of face or reaction, their eyes or the wrinkle on their forehead, maybe when they're interested, but it looks like either a critical eye or like they're grumpy. So he said, this is a church of joy, I think, right? That we've been taught. So this is, it's about happiness, the plan of happiness, and we need to be a happy people.
No, I'm grateful for that. I think it's a great perspective. We want to radiate that as much as we can and show our people that we can have great happiness despite the world that we live in. And I'm kind of enjoying right now. I just spoke to a group of young single adults this week to let them know that, hey, guess what? The world has always had difficulty. There's been many times in the world's history where we've had great challenges. In fact, I went back and looked at the year I graduated from high school, which was 1981. And I couldn't believe what was going on in the world in 1981. We had a pope that was an assassination attempt on a pope. We had Anwar Sadat, prime minister of Egypt, assassinated. President Reagan was shot. There were gas prices that had doubled or tripled just from the year before. The economy was kind of in a crazy spot. And once again, that was just what the world was in 1981. And so I think it's good for our younger people to know that, yeah, we've weathered these storms before and we can weather them again, and we can still find great happiness. And so speaking of those storms, in your message, you mentioned COVID. as you spoke to our stake, and you talked about these three great needs of safety, satisfaction, and connection. Dave, do you feel like we're getting those back from 2020, 2021, 22? Where are we now?
Yeah, it's interesting as you bring up those three needs, the safety, the need for satisfaction and connection that we're all born with. And COVID, it's interesting. It was one of the few things historically, we've had some ups and downs, but one of the few things historically that wiped out all three needs in a matter of a few days, right? Safety and we're up, masks and vaccinations, all this chaos. Satisfaction, you can't go out to the movies, you can't go bowling, you can't do any of this kind of fun stuff. And then connection. I couldn't see my parents, right, for over a year, and it was so a chaotic time. So interestingly, historically, right, we were like one of the, as far as records are concerned, one of the most unhappy times in our history. And just real quick with the gospel link with that, right? This is a plan of joy, of happiness, like we talked about. That's the need for satisfaction, the need for connection, relationships. We're here and on family and relationships. And so that was fractured. It was really a difficult time. I think, Mark, stepping back the big picture, I think we're coming, back. We're out of that. I knew that we would come back to hugs and handshakes and high fives. And I think we're there with that type of, fun and connection. I think one of the biggest things though is now virtual meetings, hey, instead of, board meetings or hey, going down to the community center, meeting with different organizations, even here in town, it seems to all be done locally. The Utah Marriage Commission, we meet once a year in person instead of four times before COVID. So some
Right.
of that, it's just changed. Technology is great, but it just doesn't replace kind of the face-to-face stuff. So yeah,
Right.
in a way, I think it's coming back. It's just different.
Yeah, it is. It is different now. So, Dave, was super intrigued by this in your message once again that 50% of happiness comes from genetics. That's really interesting.
Mhm.
10% from outside circumstances, but 40% from intentional activities. So, tell us about that. Intentional activities. We can actually create or manufacture happiness in some way.
Yeah, and I love this aspect of this. Kind of brings me the excitement, some positivity. The work is from Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky, I think is how you pronounce her name. In the book,
Yeah.
The How of Happiness, she talks about this happiness pie, and I love that 40% slice we have a lot of control. We don't have any control over our genetics, so we can thank or curse our parents, but only for about half of that. But that's true for for mental health, for our physical wealth, for even for our body weight. A lot of that, right, is genetic. 10% though is the, how much money you make, even who you're in a relationship with, the size of your home, all, the stuff. It only accounts for 10% because we get used to things. We get a new car and then we get used to it. We get a new phone and then we get used to it. So that 40%, I love talking about this with students. I created bookmarks on all this because it's these happy hacks is what I call them. Really, it's our attitude, it's our behaviors, the things that we have a lot more control on. It's smiling, it's sunshine, it's gratitude, it's mindfulness, random acts of kindness, all of these types of activities that we intentionally can do. For example, one of these, Mark, is soaking in the small wins. I love being able, whoever's listening to this, finding the good, finding the little gems in the day, and then I call it just kind of soaking it and celebrating the small wins. We need to just soak a bit in a good, a good experience, whether with riding in the car with a child, or we're one of their games, or we're on a walk or a hike or vacation, whatever it is. Just kind of pause and just in your mind, or even with them, being like, man, isn't this great? I've done that on the ski lift. My son and I going snowboarding up to Beaver Mountain, and we'll just chat and be like, man, this is awesome, isn't it? Because what happens is that the good stuff in our brains, Mark, is like Teflon, right? The good stuff just hits and it slides off. It's the negativity and that yucky stuff that tends to stick in
Yeah.
our brains instead of sliding off, and then we dwell on it and we regret and we're embarrassed, or we get angry and upset. So we have to soak in the good stuff, and that's part of that 40% of that slice that we can intentionally focus on. Remember, right? The scriptures talk about writing things down in journals so we can remember the good times, because the negativity can feel suffocating at time, and we can think, man, my life is awful. But if we look and capture those those little moments, those small moments, and soak in those. It takes actually a few seconds, 10, 20 seconds for it to stick in our brain. That's why I say soak in it for 10 to 20
Yeah.
seconds. Just live in it for a minute so it will stick.
So powerful. And I'm thinking of, you were mentioning the scriptures. I just love in Second Nephi, and something that Elder Bednar amplifies all the time, that we're here to act and not be acted upon, and to be intentional, right? And so here we are
Absolutely.
now as parents and grandparents, where we can actually plan and create some of this happiness in our families. I remember, Dave, for us, when COVID hit, my wife and I just made a joint decision together. We said, you know what, we're going to enjoy this. We're going to find a way to radiate to our grandchildren that this is not as horrible as the media is making it out to be in terms of doom and gloom. And we're going to have fun. And we just organized with our family a lot of fun things to do during that time period. And I kind of look back on that now and miss it, because we wanted our grandkids to not think cataclysmic. We
Yes.
wanted them to think positive, hopeful. What are our opportunities? And we really did have a great time during that period. So I love that you're sharing this with us. Thank you.
Mark, the opposite of
Yeah.
that is fear. And that's where the adversary, you turn on the news and you could be sucked in at that time like 24 hours. Just like, okay, what's going on? Look how many cases and deaths and it's spreading. And yeah, he focused on fear, but I love you said the word hope. I love that. Looking for the good. And it takes intentionality. It just doesn't accidentally happen in families.
Okay, Dave, help us distinguish as you and once again, everyone, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just referring to this wonderful message that Dave shared with the members of our stake. But you talked about these three types of happiness. You talked about the pleasant life, the good life, and the meaningful life. What do you want to tell us about those three categories of happiness?
Yeah, each of these are important, but they're very different. And I'll briefly talk about each of these. The work comes from Dr. Martin Seligman. He's often
Yeah.
referred to as the father of positive psychology. He has some great books. So I'm a big fan of the work, the research that he has done. And he talks about the pleasant life, right? The pleasant life. This focuses on the pursuit of its positive emotions, its pleasurable experiences. Again, this the cheesecake or the Disneyland, the woohoo, the fun times. But don't get me wrong, right? When I think of pleasure, we often think, oh, that's Satan or that's immorality or whatever. During COVID, we had fun times. We laughed, we played, we did fun, enjoyable things, vacations. But that's a temporary type of a happiness, right? It's
Mhm.
minimize pain and get and maximize pleasure. So sometimes, if taken too far, it's the Hollywood type of happiness and just get as much as I can and get more than everyone else. But then it kind of leaves people feeling hollow inside if we're only chasing that type of the pleasant life. So again, nothing wrong with it necessarily, unless we're consumed with it or we're seeking sin, trying to find that pleasure. But it's generally, and here it is, it's relatively short-lived and has limitations, right? And how much pleasure one can experience in that time. So that's kind of the pleasant life, this temporary fun. And then he
Mm.
talks about the good life, or he's going to refer to it as the engaged life, and that involves achieving a state of flow. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi came up with this concept of being completely absorbed in activities, right, that leverage your personal strengths. You think about that, Mark. What is it that brings me flow? And it can be in work activities. Mothers can be cooking or creating or crafting or work on a project or doing a puzzle or up on the slopes with my son. It's where we're so engaged, so immersed in something that we almost lose track of time. So we engage
Mm.
something. It kind of stretches us a little bit. So it uses our strengths, some of our gifts, and our talents. It's looking for new opportunities, challenges, things that kind of push us maybe out of our comfort zone, but really get us going. In athletics, I'm a big sports guy.
Mhm.
We're talking about getting in the zone. That someone's shooting free throws and the crowd's going crazy, but they tune it all out because they're just in that state of flow or in the zone, or they can throw up a shot from anywhere, right, gym or range, and it's going in everywhere. It's
Yeah.
a deeper satisfaction than mere pleasure, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the
Right.
second type. That's the good life. And
Yeah.
then the meaningful life, he says, it centers on it's using our personal strengths to really serve something larger than yourself. So connecting to a purpose, right? This is community, donating blood. This can be in our church callings. This can be, helping refugees or PTA or government or whatever it is. We're giving a piece of our time and our talents and our efforts to something bigger than ourselves. And that brings a different type of feeling, right? It brings more like meaning and purpose and that real joy that is different than the woohoo type of a, lagoon type of fun experience. So again, each of these are different. One thing that I'll point out, Mark, is that the pleasant life, these pleasures, are always about you. The meaningful life is never about you. Isn't that
Right.
interesting? Yeah, it's serving something higher. I still may feel good, but I'm not doing it so I can feel good. That's more than pleasant.
What a great distinction. And so, Dave, is the idea here with these three areas that we want to move into the meaningful life, or is it that we can actually have this joy in all these different stages? I mean, how do you view that?
Yeah, that's a great question because people might think of this as this progression from doing things that are fun to doing things with my talents to Christ-like service, and the answer is all three. All three are part of this happiness. So yeah, we can go out on a family trip. We can go camping and just have fun and laugh. That's the pleasant life, and then we can engage in something. I'm making something with a. My dad, he loves carving. He carves Christmas ornaments. That's more of that flow, which is great as well. And then my parents, they serve in the temple, and that's the meaningful life. So it's kind of this balance in life, that we're not too focused on the pleasant life, and that tends to be the dopamine hit, the one that we go for, the thrill, the immediate, the pleasure, the satisfaction. So it's important to kind of say, hey, make time in my life for these different activities that bring me happiness, joy, and meaning.
No, Dave, I think that's great. And I like what you're saying because that's how I would view it as we should spend time in all three of those areas. No,
Mm,
no question about it.
yeah.
And once again, grateful to belong to a church that helps us zero in on a meaningful life. My wife and I were in the temple a little while ago, and the temple sealer said, I'm so grateful for the church. Here I am, 80 something years old. If it wasn't for coming to the temple every day and having something to do, I don't know what I'd be doing with my life at this stage. But he was kind of referring to the fact that a lot of people at that stage of their lives don't have things to engage in that would bring great meaning and happiness. And he's saying, oh man, there's so many opportunities we have in the church to serve and help others. And I like,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
That reminded me, even like Tuesday night, young men, young women activities. That some nights they're going and they're just having fun. And that's, the pleasant life. Other times that they're using their skills, and other times they're going to the food pantry. And so just another example, right, of how we can,
And hitting all three of those.
all three of those. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, what about this idea of the four core values? I was really intrigued as you spoke
Mhm.
about having four core values in our life and how those impact our happiness. Dave, could you develop that just for a minute?
Yeah, you bet. So I love this idea of identifying your core four is what I call them. And values, this is not things that you value, but these are things like curiosity and humor and honesty, loyalty, compassion, humility, gratitude, kindness, all those types of values. And the idea is, with the research behind this, the happiest people on this planet, Mark, are those who know their values, and then they strive to align their behavior with their values. Now, all of us, I fall short on that. One of my, core four is compassion and kindness, and so I try to be a kind parent. But occasionally, maybe regularly, I lose it, and am impatient, and maybe I use a tone that I shouldn't use, and so I fall short of okay kindness. So then I ask for forgiveness, and I strive. It's called the guilt gap, right? When our behavior doesn't align with our values, there's this gap. But don't go down the shame slide. That's the like, oh, I'm a horrible parent. Man, I'm a messed up mom, and my kids hate me, and I shouldn't have done that. No, no, no. That's striving to align your core four with your behaviors. And here's a simple little way. Okay, what are my core four? People may be asking, man, there's all kinds of things that I want to be. If someone is speaking at your funeral, so this podcast just took a grim turn here, Mark. This right, someone's going to speak at your funeral. And if they could only use four words to describe the type of person that you were, right, the character that you lived your life, what four words would you want them to describe you as, right? Is this compassion? Is it humility? Is it grateful? Is it a positive person? Is it loyal, humble? Whatever it is, that's your core four. So not necessarily, but what about five? Yeah, you can have five. The idea is, what do I really want my values to be? And do my children know my values? Do your children know your core four, right? Do you talk about those, about how important these values are to me as a parent? So being able to share that and live that so people don't have to guess what type of person you are, and then striving to live according to your values, which is a lifelong process.
Sure, and so I think you're helping us see that that happiness comes, that fulfillment in life comes as we're aligned with
Right.
those values. And we
Yep.
probably live in a lot of frustration when they're not. So,
Yes. Yep. That's right.
Dave, I loved your happiness hacks, and
Mm.
you've shared a lot of those over the years. I think it would be kind of cool to hear from you of these happiness hacks, what you would say, hey, here for me personally, these are my top three or four that
Mm.
really have made a difference in my life.
Yeah, that's a good one because I've studied this for a year. So what is it that, what are my kind of my top ones, my
Right?
go-tos? I guess I would start, Mark, actually with the foundation, and that is exercise, diet, and I call it the big three: exercise, diet, and sleep. Because
Yeah.
so this is not like a big, revelation, but honestly, when any of those are out of sorts and I didn't sleep well the night before, then yeah, I'm more cranky to others, and I'm not the best person I can be if I'm not eating well, if I'm not exercising. So honestly, it's taking care of us first. I like to say that a happy we starts with a happy and healthy me. And so
Yeah.
honestly, for me, that's foundational. Making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, not in a selfish way. I can go work out in the gym for 3 hours or whatever, but getting those essentials in order, I think is critical. I think another key one that the research backs this up to is gratitude, expressions of gratitude. I think it was Elder
Yeah.
or President Eyring that once said that we should never fail to thank those who have taught us well. I was a young man I can't remember the setting. I think it was with my dad in a priesthood meeting somewhere, and he said that, and I've never forgotten it. So then I started
Wow.
writing letters to former priesthood leaders, scoutmasters, and teachers in high school. There's something about this outward expression of appreciation and gratitude. So thinking to thank, making
Mm.
time. One of the a little quick one. This one is easy for anyone to do. I call it text two before 10.
Yeah.
Text two people before 10 a.m. A message of gratitude, of love, of appreciation. Hey, how's your mom? I heard she has cancer. Or hey, we need to go out to lunch and catch up. Hey, just thinking of you. Or hey, good luck on your test today, son. Or this one, right? Hey, letting my daughter know in a text or maybe face to face, I absolutely love being your dad. Right? When is the last
Mm.
time that a child has heard that from a
Yeah.
parent or a grandparent say, I just need to let you know, just been thinking about you today, that I absolutely love being your grandpa. One of the highlights
Yeah.
of my life. Love you. Have a great day. I mean, that takes what, 15 seconds, Mark? But
And it
that
just changed someone's
small.
life.
Oh, and it has already, as I've done this all across the country, people have come up afterwards when I've had them text too, and one person was in tears saying, I had no idea that one of my friends was suicidal and I needed to reach out. They've always been on my mind. And I said, text them. And then you finally told me to text somebody, and I texted them, we're going to lunch next week. So small little expressions of gratitude. And another one I'll mention, Mark, is kindness. I call it
Yeah.
racks, random acts
Yeah.
of kindness. And Martin Seligman, I mentioned him earlier, this kind of father positive psychology. He says he says kindness is king. He says an act of kindness produces the single most reliable momentary increase in well-being, he says, of any exercise that they've ever tested. Now, as
Wow.
members of the church, that
Super
probably isn't
significant.
surprising, right? Kindness and gratitude, those are both Christ-like qualities. But when we need to happiness will increase when we don't focus on us and we focus on others. For example, give you a quick story. My daughter and I, when we lived in Missouri, were kind of button heads. Anyone ever done that with a teenager or a tween? Oh,
Not
never.
here in Utah Valley.
Yeah, not here. We don't do that. But man, I was banging heads, And immediately I thought, what do I need to do? It was a Saturday and she took off and I said a little prayer. And the thought came to me clearly. It said, do her laundry. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I don't even know how to do laundry, Mark. Let me go ask my wife, honey, we got to do our daughter's laundry. So I did her
Yeah.
laundry. I folded it up. I put it on her bed with a little note, just on a sticky note, and then a little Hershey's Kiss on top. And I thought, you know what? I've got to get out of this cycle of arguing and this behavior out here and really look and see, wow, what deep unmet needs. And here's a key question I think all of us can ask ourselves. If I were to give my whole heart to this child, what would occur to me to do? And so then
Mm.
you notice the nudges and you follow the feelings. Notice the nudges, follow the feelings. And when she came home, right, she kind of melted. When someone does something kind for you, it will heal relationships. It will mend those differences about as fast as I know of anything. It will strengthen those connections we talked about earlier that we so cherish. So those are a few, right? We can
Yeah.
forgiveness and sunshine and smiling and all those types of things as well. But those are kind of my go-tos.
Dave, I think those are great, and I'm grateful. In fact, when you started off and you mentioned exercise, sleep, and eating right, I always tell people one of the things that they didn't prepare us for in graduate school was how significant sleep is, because we live in a world, I think, where most are sleep deprived in some way. Even our
Oh yeah.
teenagers
Mhm.
are on their devices sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they're just not functioning well. So just adequate sleep is crucial.
Mhm.
But and then I think of random acts of kindness, and I think, that was such a there was a book called Random Acts of Kindness that was published in the 1990s. And it's time to bring that book back, Dave. Maybe it's time for
Let's
you to do something with
let's
random
do
acts
it
of
again.
kindness. That's so awesome. But one of the ones that I wanted I thought this was so good. If you could comment on this one, this was one
Yeah.
of your happiness hacks. This idea of starting off your day in a positive way. Could you just
Mm.
tell us a little bit about more about that, of how you kind of roll out of the bed and just start your day on a good note?
Yeah, this one is critical and probably not surprising, right? We even joke and say, "Oh, looks like woke up on the wrong side of the bed." So we do have these little sayings, knowing, a good night's sleep. It starts with that. But a quick little study with this, they found they had actually a group of people watch 3 minutes of negative news first thing in the morning. They were required, and they had these clips ready for them to watch. And a group that had 3 minutes of positive news, and then three that were general. They didn't just kind of basic news that was neither positive nor negative. And they found out that those who started their day with just 3 minutes, Mark, of negative news, they were 26% more likely at the end of their day. This is 6 to 8 hours later. Then they looked back and they rated their entire day. How was your day? And they were 26% more likely to rate their entire day as a bad day. So it
Yeah,
goes back to this. How do you start your day? So here's some ideas, right? As a member of the church, we can roll out of bed, we can pray. We can, instead of grabbing our phone and scroll, the Dead Sea Scrolls is what I call, yeah, scroll for like an hour. Instead of doing
yeah,
that, science shows drinking a full glass of water kind of kickstarts your system going. And some people like to read. Some people will listen to music, meditation. I like to exercise. That's when I get my exercise on our elliptical first thing in the morning. Go down, I have a little 20-minute setting, kick that
yeah,
on, put on my headphone, listen to your podcast, and go
yeah.
go go. Right. So starting your day, what you put in your brain as far as songs, how many of us say, man, I can't get this song out of my head. It's been stuck in my head all day. If we
Yeah,
put it in either the night before or recently or the first thing in the morning, our brain is so open to whatever you put into it. So, right.
yeah,
And then I read my scriptures. So starting the day with positive things, it just sets the tone for the rest of the day. So there's something about the beginning, having a good positive start in life.
And Dave, as you know, because you've done so much research on technology, that
Mm,
often with so many now, the first thing they do is they grab their phone when they wake up. These are adults and teenagers, right? And they just start, as you said, dead sea scrolling. And it
mhm.
does. I think it can have such a negative impact, and you haven't even got out of bed yet, right?
Yeah.
So I love
Yeah.
love your ideas. Dave, maybe we finish with this one thought. Love asking this question, but every time I'm around you, you're always upbeat, positive. hopeful, optimistic. And we know that the world that we live in isn't an easy, this is not an easy place to live in. It's a difficult environment for so many. So many are living in depression and anxiousness all day. How do you personally
Mhm.
maintain this happy attitude, this positive outlook? What do you do? We'd love to learn from you.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. I think the key first and foremost, and we find it all in the scriptures, it's seek first the kingdom of God. Put God first in our lives. Make that a priority. Gene R. Cook, Elder Cook once said, when our priorities are out of order, we lose power. And I think
Yeah.
that's so profound. And Elder Holland, the solutions to life's problems, they're always gospel solutions. I think that's powerful. So I have a little mantra, and I think I talked about it there, these 8 words that I strive to live by, Mark. And it's search inward. What are my gifts, talents, strengths? What has God blessed me with? Turn outward is the second little couplet. Turn outward, gratitude, kindness. What can I do for others? Look upward, making sure that I know the source of hope and happiness and joy and positivity and pressing forward through the challenges and the struggles that are going to come in each of our lives. Those are going to come. So search inward, turn outward, look upward, and press forward. And then, ultimately, Mark, I think that we live in a day and age of, you mentioned it before, of distraction. I think of the adversary can distract us with whether it's phones or it's anything else. We live in a day of distraction. So I think that the opposite of distraction, Mark, really one of the greatest gifts that we can give and one of the strongest predictors of happiness is not necessarily our time, spending time with others, but a greater gift, I call it the golden gift, is our attention. Our
Yeah.
attention. What are we paying? Because we can read the scriptures and not pay attention. We can be with our child and not pay attention. Our minds drift all over the place. So when we're in the temple, paying attention, when we're in meetings, giving attention. That's the greatest gift we can give a speaker is our attention, or a child, or a spouse. It's not our time, it's our attention. And so here I'd like to leave our listeners with this. Lack of attention leads to loss of connection. Lack of
Yeah.
attention leads to loss of connection. Parent-child relationships, marriages, and with our Savior, with the Godhead.
Yeah.
Lack of attention leads to loss of connection. So pay attention to where you are giving your attention.
Yeah. Dave, I think that is such a great invitation. We always love to close our podcast with LDS, let's do something. And I think
Mhm.
what you're saying about attention and that focus on not just time, but being tuned into someone, and to
Yes,
give them attention is a great way to not only help them with their own happiness, but with ours. So,
absolutely.
Dave, before we close, could you just tell our listeners where they could find you and your stuff online, because you have offered so many resources to people, which we're so grateful for.
Yeah, you can go to strongermarriage.org. So that's been around for like 20 years. It's up at Utah State. We have free, webinars. You can find the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. You can find over 100 of these free e-courses that are like 15 minutes. You can find longer ones on all kinds of topics. So I would say, yeah, that's the place to go for the resources. Healthy Relationships Utah. We have classes, again, free all across the state of Utah, from step families to high school kids to singles, all over. So Healthy Relationships Utah, strongermarriage.org. And if others, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. If people want to find me there.
Known as Dr. Dave.
That's
Well,
right.
Dr. Dave, thank you so much for being with us today. It's always awesome. I always love talking to you. I always walk away having felt edified and have learned something new. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for all you do, Mark, and I appreciate you having me on today.
You bet.